And hello everyone, welcome to another video. We are going to go over posture today. So what is posture? Posture is the position of your body and its moving parts at any given time. It can be static or dynamic, so you can have static posture, which is just sitting, laying, or standing around. And then we have dynamic posture, which is anytime the body is in movement. Okay, just think of this as a stack of blocks. We stack a bunch of blocks on top of each other, and that's kind of how we get our posture. Our legs are an individual segment, our pelvis is an individual segment, our trunk is an individual segment, then our head and our arms are also independent segments. So if you think about stacking all these parts together, that's really what posture is, and that's what we're exploring as we look at posture. So when we first look at it, you see our blocks here on the left, we look at vertebral alignment. Okay, this is built with counterbalancing curves. So thoracic and sacral curves counter the force of the cervical and lumbar curves. We call these curves lordosis and kyphosis, which we've already discussed a little bit with the trunk and the pelvis as well. But if we look at it a little bit further, right? So we have this cervical curve right here, which is a little bit of a lordotic curve, and then our lumbar curve, which is also a lordotic curve. Okay, then we have this posterior protruding curve, which is our thoracic curve and our sacral curve, and we call those kyphotic curves, okay, or kyphosis. Okay, and as you look at this lordotic curve is able to go and protrude forward because as it moves forward, the kyphotic curve maintains uh, shifts the weight posterior, and then the lordotic curve of the lumbar spine pushes it anterior, and thus it balances it out. And it's like a stack of Jenga blocks. If you ever played that game, that's really what this all comes down to. But what helps stabilize the bones is the anti-gravity muscles, okay? So these are, if you look at our yellow over here, our neck flexors, our neck and trunk extensors, our trunk flexors, our knee extensors, and our hip extensors. These are always firing to maintain our upright posture. If we are upright, or if we're seated, then it would be trunk flexors, neck and trunk extensors, and neck flexors that are firing. And if we're lying down, then we kind of shut these off, and that's a little bit of a different analysis on that, but in general, this is what it is. Okay, these muscles are primarily responsible for keeping us upright in static and dynamic posture. And then secondarily, you can see down there the trunk and neck extensors, lateral flexors, the hip AD and abductors, ankle pronators and supinators. Those all have secondary involvement in the posture and maintaining this posture, but we are focusing mostly on the primary here. Without these muscles activating when we are standing, the body would just collapse down to the floor. So we don't really get much from that if they turn off. And that's why you start seeing some of these hunchback old ladies and things like that, as they're mostly taking this sedentary lifestyle. As we get more sedentary, we start not using muscles, and then this happens. Or even now, if you look at COVID, right, a lot of you guys are sitting at your desk, thus you're kind of sitting and not using your neck and trunk extensors. So you start hunching over a keyboard or a laptop or a notebook, and then these neck flexors become a little bit tight in here as well. So you start to get this round back kyphotic posture. Okay. Then as we're standing, a lot of times what we can see is that you might get some postural sway. What postural sway is either a posterior sway or an anterior sway, and this really focuses on our ankle plantar flexors and dorsiflexors. So you look here, if we're posterior, our ankle dorsiflexors are activated, and if we are anterior sway, our ankle plantar flexors are activated. Okay, so this is a result typically of a constant displacement or a correction to the center of gravity, right? Because if you were to stand straight up, what would happen is you would fall over. So you get this postural sway to help compensate for that center of gravity. So we need to start looking and analyzing what's actually happening within the body to actually analyze these body parts and see what's actually causing these dysfunctions. Okay, and this goes back to kind of that feet apart, wide base of support, feet together, narrow base of support, and that kind of can help stabilize the body as well. when you do have a good posture, you typically have less stress on bone, ligament, muscles, and tendons. Okay? And it also increases our function and decreases muscle energy expenditure. And ballet is good for posture, or is good at observing posture at its finest, right? That's what it's all about in ballet, is nice clean lines and maintaining upright posture. Okay? So you can see how you see the less stress on bone, ligament, muscle, and tendon. So if I'm leaning anteriorly, I'm increasing the force on my feet, increasing the stress on the Achilles tendon here, and thus you can get a little Achilles tendonitis where this Achilles gets inflamed because it's always in a resting tension due to this anterior postural sway. And then because of that, I have increased force on my metatarsals, and then if I were to be an active person and I was running around or just going hiking even, we could say something as a lower expenditure activity like that, you're going to increase the stress on these metatarsals, and thus you can cause some stress fractures based off that. So how do we evaluate posture? So we do that typically through standing, and we use a plumb line. We do it standing because when we're standing, we're able to see the body and the center of gravity as it moves straight through the body. So we evaluate it using what they call a plumb line, which is a string or cord with a weight attached to the end, and it's used to identify upright posture. Typically, we look at this from the lateral view, and you see that the plumb line should move through the points of the picture over here, and that is through the earlobe, through the acromion process, through the lumbar vertebral bodies, through the greater trochanter, through the posterior of the patella, and then anterior to the lateral malleolus, or right through. It depends on what you look at. Sometimes it says posterior to the lateral malleolus, sometimes it says through the lateral malleolus, and sometimes it says anterior. So for us, we'll say anterior or middle of the lateral malleolus, okay? Now if we look at what we can actually evaluate, it's actually the earlobe as we can look at. We know where to find the acromion process. Can't really find the lumbar bodies because we have organs and muscle and skin there. So we can't see that, but we can go ahead and see this greater trochanter right here. And we can see how it runs right kind of through the middle or posterior to that, depending on the rotation of your pelvis. And then we can see, we know where the patella is, we know how to find that, so we can find that. And then we know where the lateral malleolus is, so we can evaluate that as well. When we look at the plumb line from an anterior point of view, we're looking for any medial or lateral deformities or dysfunction. We want to look at this as it moves straight down through the body. So we're looking to see if the head is extended, not flexed or hyperextended, so that our chin is down pretty much. Sometimes you'll see that the head or the nose kind of points up. We want to look that the shoulders are level with each other. We want to look at the sternum. The sternum is on midline. We want to make sure there's no genu valgum or varum, so bow-legged or knock-kneed. We want to make sure that the ankles are normal, and we have normal arches, not pes plantis, not pes cavus. So high arches are flat feet. Pes plantis is flat feet. Pes cavus is high arches. You want to make sure that the ankles do not invert or pronate. You want to see slightly toe out. When looking from the posterior aspect, you should see that the last two toes, the fifth and the fourth phalanges on your toes, should be visible. And you want to check the ASIS for lateral tilt, right? We've done that in class already. Ideally, we want to check the pubic symphysis to make sure that's even. And then you always want to ask for permission when we're going to evaluate these, because it is sometimes a sensitive or ticklish area for people. Looking posteriorly, you want to see once again that the head is extended, not flexed, or it's slightly extended but not flexed. Once again, you'll look at the nose for that, really, to find out whether that's extended or flexed. You want to make sure the shoulders are level and not depressed. You want to make sure the spinous processes are in line and centered. You want to make sure that the PSIS is level. And you want to look at the knees again to make sure no genu valgum or varum. And then the calcaneus should be relatively straight, and you can look at those fourth and fifth metatarsals or phalanges that you can probably see on the lateral side there. When we're looking at sitting, which is what most of you guys are probably doing now, and just what you're doing probably 60% of your day, to be honest, at this point in time, maybe even higher, right? Disc pressure in the sitting position increases by just under half than when we are standing. And you can really see that in this picture. So look at this good posture here. When you're sitting upright, you have about 12 pounds of pressure from your head. That's about how much your head weighs. And that's pushing down on your axial skeleton, right? So straight down the middle. And then as you look, the back is about 12 pounds of force. So that's why sitting up in good posture is so important. But let's just say you're getting tired and you're reading a book or you're trying to focus in on a video, maybe this awesome video here. And you can see that that 12 pounds of the head now is no longer supported by the spinal column. It's now just hanging over this unsupported area. That increases the force on our thoracic spine and the muscles back there up to 36 pounds, so 3 times the amount of force there. Okay, and you can see the amount of force put through the body, through the spinal column, in each of these positions. So laying on your back is only 25 pounds, on your side 75, standing about 100, 150% of the force. This is percentages, I'm sorry I said that wrong, so about 25% of your body weight, 75% of your body weight, 100% of your body weight when you're standing. When you lean over, you're now putting about 150 pounds of 150% of your body weight through your body. 220 when you add a weight hanging from there. About 140 when you're sitting through the spinal column. 185% when you're kind of leaning forward on that. And when you're seated, leaning forward, and holding a weight, you're looking at about 275% of the force running through your spinal column, and that's how you can get a lot of these disc and facet issues happening because of this poor posture, and the force needs to go somewhere. This is just kind of a quick little summary of common postural deviations that we can see as we go and evaluate posture. So we see we have the head leaning forward. It can be tilted and rotated on the posterior. This is a good chart, just really if you wanted to print it out or take a screenshot, pause the video, use the Windows snipping tool, take a snip, boom, or take a picture, on your phone, and you can see it from there. Alrighty, so I would recommend pausing and reading this screen here. Other than that, I believe this is the last slide for posture for us, and we will evaluate some posture in class. Yep. Alrighty, I will see you guys later.